Yeah, my name is Pat Murphy. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I made a film about psychedelic research called Psychedelia, the History and Science of Mystical Experience. I was just fascinated by the 1960s counterculture. In high school, I read Timothy Leary books, and I listened to the Grateful Dead and all that kind of, that art and that culture from that time.
Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
I learned that there was a group of researchers at NYU, where I was going to school at the time. I was going to film school at NYU. And I learned that they were doing a study with cancer patients and giving them psilocybin along with therapy to help deal with end-of-life anxiety. And so that just I immediately became fascinated by that, because to me, psychedelics were like hippies dancing in a field in San Francisco in the 60s, and the idea that they were being used by serious researchers and doctors at a major university for a therapeutic purpose was just really interesting to me.
The worst pain and the worst fear and the worst anxiety turned into something that has opened, which is the most precious thing I've ever known.
I had a really bad experience on LSD in college. It was probably maybe the third or fourth time I took it. And I don't know if it was bad stuff that I took or whether it was the environment I was in or the mindset I was in. I'm not sure, but I had a really difficult experience. And I was really shocked, because I just thought that was propaganda from the 60s, that you could have a bad trip. And my first experiences were so overwhelmingly positive that it really took me by surprise. And I was just I was kind of lost. I had nobody to talk to about it. And again, there were nowhere near the kind of resources we have today in terms of psychedelics. So I kind of felt just kind of all alone in that. And then when I discovered the research, I think that's why I was so intrigued by it, because I was like, wow, these people are, they have cancer, they're obviously dealing with potentially facing the end of their life, leaving their loved ones. It's this huge deal, and psilocybin's being used in this very specific way, and they're having these profound, life-altering insights that allow them to just enjoy the time they have left and see their life in a completely different way. And so that's why I realized, oh, okay, I think the experience I had, I went really far, and it was a very powerful experience, and I wasn't prepared for it. I mean, it's been interesting for me to witness the transformation that took place in terms of the general public's attitude towards psychedelics, and I think a lot of that is driven by media coverage. When I started making the film in 2012, this was just very obscure. If I would tell people, hey, they're using psilocybin, at NYU to really help people with therapy, they would look at you like you had two heads. People just did not believe that it was being used for this purpose. I would say the one thing that happened was Michael Pollan came out with a book in 2018, How to Change Your Mind. And after that, the media's interest in psychedelics just exploded. And the coverage became, in my opinion, just overly positive. I mean, it was almost as if the media got a press release doing psychedelics are in now, just talk about how great they are, and they're just completely misunderstood. So I came out with my film in 2021, so that was peak positivity around psychedelics. And then I became, I spent a year or two screening the film around, talking about it, and I just became just kind of concerned that it was the dangers of psychedelics were being brushed aside, and that people were just purely interested in advocating for them and talking about them in a positive light. So I wrote a Substack article called "The Perilous Grounds of the Psychedelic Renaissance," and how what we really needed to talk about these compounds with more nuance. So I think there's been a course correction, I would say, in the past year or two. The more that I learned about the history of psychedelics, the more I became aware that when you look at them historically, there was always a very strong cultural container. So if you look at the ancient Greeks, it's widely speculated that they had these things called the Eleusinian mysteries, that was like a mystery ritual that people would go to, and that they were probably taking an LSD-like substance derived from ergot, which is what LSD is derived from. You went to the mysteries of Eleusis once, and you were forbidden from ever talking about your experience. And under punishment of death, you could not talk about what you saw at the Eleusinian mysteries. But then when you look at psychedelic use in South America, for instance, the way ayahuasca was used for hundreds, thousands of years is completely different than Westerners take it now. Whatever people are going down there to take it now, to get your new startup idea, like, that's not how they were used. They were used by shamans. The shaman basically used the ayahuasca to go like into the spirit world for various purposes. So it's all that to say that when you look at them historically, yeah, there was always a very strong cultural container. And I think what I started to witness at all these like psychedelic conferences and being with this community is just that, like, everybody had a different idea about like the direction of the movement. You had like the scientists who were saying, no, like, we can only have this in a research context. And then you had sort of more like decriminalized people who were like, no, who's to say you are the one person who can administer LSD just because you have a PhD next to your name, right? Like, this is like a human right. Like, I just noticed all these competing narratives, and I thought we just don't have a cultural container in the West. And I'm not even sure what that cultural container should be. But I think that's how psychedelics were always used historically. And so I think that gave me a lot of pause. Like, it felt like just like a Wild West, you know. Psychedelics just got released into the culture, you know, without we don't have rituals for it yet. We don't even fully understand them yet, I think. Yeah, exactly. I know. Bastards.